Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Jessica Shaw. I'm going to be moderating. I'm a host on Sirius XM on Entertainment Weekly Radio. So happy to be joined by writer-director Russell Harbaugh and star Andie MacDowell.
Thank you. I brought my scarf up.
In case it gets cold. First of all, congratulations on the film. It's so powerful. I know you all sort of look like, after I saw it, I was like, okay, I need to just now like sit and process this for a while and really think of, even like from the last shot even is so powerful. But I want to talk about this collaboration between the two of you. And Russell, we were just talking a little bit, this has been years in the making, this film, as so many films are. But what was it about Andie that you thought that she could play this, the matriarch of this family?
Sure. I think the character on the page is written to be somewhat strict and stern and cutting and kind of severe, and when we were casting, I think we kind of naturally gravitated to kind of personalities that had different qualities than what was on the page. And so we would look at kind of behind the scenes interviews more than we would look at kind of film work or TV work or things like that. I found myself watching these behind the scenes interviews of many different actors. And when I got to Andie's, it was behind the scenes of Cedar Cove, I think. And her kind of natural kind of state in front of the camera was this. It just immediately kind of leapt out at me. It was kind of silky and tender and warm and smart and had a kind of nimble naturalism to it or something. She was able to kind of, it felt to me like a kind of its own kind of performance in a way, because there's a camera rolling, but I felt like that performance, her natural performance, kind of complemented what was written on the page, and I thought would result in something complicated. And we had cast Chris O'Dowd already, and so the two of them, I would imagine that opening scene, and we talked a lot about the opening scene, Eric Mendelsohn and I, who wrote the script, and Chris Teague and I, who Chris shot the film. We would talk about that opening scene needing to feel like these two people kind of under the covers together, under the blankets together. This relationship that in the beginning of the movie is probably very disorienting, and you're not sure kind of like how they belong together, but that the kind of emotional kind of expression of their relationship would be one that bordered on the romantic, very kind of intimate, and so in my mind, Chris is kind of big, swollen, kind of masculine, next to Andie's kind of slender, silky smoothness. That felt to me like a relationship that I would immediately kind of, want to snuggle up with or something.
And was there...
Some water.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I what you said about that opening scene, and I don't know how you all felt, but I definitely watched and I was like, what's the deal with these two? Like, are they sleeping together? Are they, mother son? Are they, and but it immediately draws you in, because you're like, I'm fascinated by these two characters. Even Andie, like how you're sitting in that scene. I mean, it's a movie with so much specificity to it without being on the nose about anything, which I think is an interesting and a very compelling combination.
Yeah, and to the actor's credit, and to Andie's credit in particular, the script was written to kind of provide these kind of boundaries for a performance, the kind of specific things that are maybe noticeable in the movie that are, people are kind of talking about, like how all the little details of the movie. A lot of those are the performances that the actors are just coming up with in response to whatever the dramatic situation is. And we kind of built the project from the very beginning to kind of allow for that kind of looseness and playfulness, that we could get into a scene on set and kind of like mess around, make a mess, and that they could go find stuff.
Well, Angie, tell me what was there when you read the script. Was there a moment that you thought, I, I have to play this scene, or anything like that?
Well, it was the whole character. It's just such a beaut. She's such a well written. Everybody's well written. All the characters are interesting, but to find a mature woman that's that allowed to be that sexy and strong and interesting, complex, and to have her having a relationship with her son that has these emotional boundaries, this psychological, deep kind of psychological problems, and they love each other, but they don't really love each other in a healthy way. But yet it's normal. I think this happens all the time in every family. I know from experience.
You and me both, honey.
And it's a part of life. It's real and very rare to see it written, and written so well. And I love the fact that you get to see a mature woman having sex. It just doesn't happen. People sort of dismiss us and think that, I don't know what they think. We turn into some hideous creatures that no longer experience life or something. But she's full-fledged experiencing life. And I was really looking forward to that. I was very much looking forward to the scene with the student as well. And I love how it was done, how they ended up taking the shot from behind me, because my expressions are pretty powerful, and you don't need to see them front on. You see so much just by seeing this side of my face, the intensity and the discontent that I feel for this young lady is so powerful. It's more interesting seeing it the way it was shot, and I loved that. I was like, oh my God, look at me. Damn, the way I'm looking at her is just horrible. It's horrible. It's just, I am giving her some evil looks.
I remember
really
shooting
intensely.
that scene. There aren't so many scenes like that in the movie, where like a kind of a single scene will have, the movie doesn't have, these big scenes that have a full shape to them. A lot of the scenes are kind of these little small shards of something, but that scene was different, and it had this whole shape to it. And I remember you were so hungry for that scene. We would talk about it kind of leading up to the days.
Everything.
Of course.
But I was real excited about that scene.
And I remember, shooting the first take and just being like, oh shit, like
I was excited to do that part, and then my intention was that I would have instant regret and realize what a fool I had made of myself. And I love the way we rocked that was in there, that we rocked back and forth with Francesca. I just thought that was such a sweet, intimate, good friend. Like, yeah, you messed up.
Yeah.
You messed up, but it's okay.
And it was that was a moment, especially as a woman watching that, I was like, you are so tapped into like what a woman friendship, know?
Yeah.
And
that's cool.
Yeah, that's what it is. She can tell me I'm all wrong and come down on me, and we're gonna hug in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna wake up. I'm gonna walk out and realize I've just acted so stupid.
The reviews are out for the film, and they're absolutely glowing, and so many people, Andy, saying this is like some of the best work you've ever done in your decades acting, which must feel great. But I was this the kind of, I imagine, I don't see many, and you said it as well, that you don't see many women, given all of these emotions, to play a mother, to play a sexual woman, to play a friend, to play a professional, to play a wife, and it seems like there's so much. I imagine this is not, these offers are not coming by, all the time. These scripts aren't being written.
No, I kept saying to Russ, I was so happy to be there. I kept asking him if I was in the movie. I was like, is this really happening? Am I in the movie?
I think they'll come again now. I think, I think that this is...
I just don't know if anybody can. I hope people can write like this. I feel like most men don't even understand how complex and interesting women are. And you really do. You do understand. I think the way you see, you love women, but you like all the dirty bits too. You like the whole thing. And and you see us as equal and as equally as interesting too, and the dark side. You like the dark of light, the dark side, and that we all have both sides. I'm sorry, we do. We have dark, we have light. We screw up. We treat people inappropriately, and sometimes we treat people beautifully. And people I just don't see people writing that depth, that deep of characters.
Which was also something I loved about the film, because there's sort of like, we're spoon fed so many things, often on film, and this was the kind of thing that Suzanne or any of the characters might act a certain way, but it's because of something that happened a month ago or a year, and it's the way that they are behaving in that moment has nothing to do with that moment. It has to do with everything else. And it's a very, in some ways, as a viewer, it's appropriately disorienting, because the movie should be that. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about directing that and about acting that, because you're acting based in some ways on like a buildup of emotion as opposed to the emotion of the moment.
Man, that is a beautifully articulated description of the movie, and I want to hear your response to that. Also, I think from my perspective, we were kind of working from the very beginning in the script, kind of after this kind of sensation of not being able to catch up to your own life, that like life kept leaping out in front of you and one event after another, this kind of disorienting kind of whirlwind of change, which we were trying to that felt very cinematic to me, that feeling. It felt like a movie could probably make that feeling. And so we kind of went after the script, kind of, wondering how you do that and investigating how you do that. And then kind of through the production, kind of played with this very fine line between how much, information you could remove, how much you can ask of an audience, really. The kind of lack of information that's a propellant to an audience, that kind of pulls an audience forward kind of breathlessly, or the lack of information that's just frustrating and makes an audience kind of, say, fuck you, I'm not watching anymore, And so I think, from a kind of formal perspective, kind of everything about the design of the movie was trying to kind of work in the direction of how you do that. The question about performance, though, is I find very interesting, and I have my own questions about it, because I think both Andie and Chris at different times in the movie are kind of really challenged by jumping into a scene and a performance and a set of emotions that do have a kind of origin, way back. It doesn't, Chris, when we did the toast scene, I remember, every take, it was like he was just trying to figure out, like, I don't understand the emotional beats that directly led to this. And I eventually had to say, like, I don't know either, but I know the movie has been constructed that it needs it, it wants it, and it will allow for it, And do you remember, like, how you would kind of prepare for scenes, like, because of the kind of jumble of them?
I really didn't. I didn't have those issues. I had already come up with an idea of what it all meant to me.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing felt like a struggle. I had already made up all my own decisions for myself.
Yeah.
And didn't have any problems questioning things the audience wouldn't see. I never really even thought about it until, everybody started talking about it. But for me, it all just made sense. There was no question.
I think the absence for your character is maybe more clean or something, or like the kind of response to the absence. It was your husband, it was someone, it was your companion, the person that you kind of made a life with in the house. I think for Chris's character, it's more complicated. It's like, what's he trying to fill, and what his mistakes, kind of keeping, like, he compounds his mistakes by doubling down and doubling down and doubling down, which,
and maybe he felt, maybe it was harder for him because his behavior I thought his behavior could be quite cruel, and I think maybe that's harder to play.
Oh, for sure.
Whereas my behavior was, I think it's it's more empathetic, because my behavior, the reason, like for me, I decided by myself. I didn't ask you why I slept with my coworker. I didn't ask you why.
Right.
I already knew for me
Right.
why.
Why?
What? Well, I think it was comfortable. I think that, she felt like she was lonely. I think she felt connected to him. She laughed when they went out that night, probably for the first time.
That's what I think in the
Yeah.
movie too. I'm just like,
It was
oh,
like
they had
she
that nice little
laughed.
moment, so they went
She
home
laughed
together.
and she had a beer and she relaxed. And he asked her to come home, and she thought, well, maybe this will feel good. And so she tried, thinking it might feel good because she was so lonely. And she knew it was gonna, like she had already contemplated. So now what do I do? What am I gonna do? Will there ever that kind of feeling? And she was already intimate enough with him. Maybe I already had some attraction to him intellectually, and he was safe. So, but it didn't feel good. That's obvious. She felt, and I loved the line, I feel like I'm having an affair. I mean, and that just says it all right there. It's
mom
the
said that.
discomfort.
That's,
Really?
That's one of the lines that's like totally just like,
And the second time, it was kind of questionable as to, like, because I did ask, do you think they stayed together, Matt Salinger's? And you said no, they don't.
yeah.
This doesn't happen. But
I think the end of the movie, you mean?
Yeah. I think the second relationship my son ruins for me. He's not coming back.
I'll say, yeah.
I think that one's moving
Michael.
on.
I'm curious what you said that you kind of came up with this as an actor. Do you tend to do that with all of your roles? Do you kind of have your script and you have your snapshot of a story of the character you'll be playing? Do you like spend time really figuring out this character's origins, what, like, even we know some about their about the marriage, but how much do you really like build this world of this person that you'll be playing?
Well, when I first started, did it in a neurotic student way, because that's what you do in the beginning. You just, I like Sex, Lies, and Videotape. I wrote my history. I really went back and researched my history, and I even put it up on stage in class, which was insane, because I don't know that Stephen would really appreciate that nowadays. But I did. This is before cell phones.
Did he know?
No, I didn't. I didn't even think anything about it. I was just working on it, But for this, I would contemplate each scene by scene. I thought about my history to some degree, but I also use a lot of my own understanding of relationships, real relationships, for the whole boundary thing. That I have personal. I know that, so that was just because I know what that. Sorry, I know what that is.
Do you tend to share or intentionally share or not share with directors those things? Like, is that something that you feel like?
Usually they're so busy. I don't bother them with it. I just do it unless they ask me or something. They want to be sure I'm connected or something. Then I would tell them, like. But Stephen and I had very different views, and I didn't really understand it until it was all done. That he didn't really understand my views, but I never really told him. So on Sex, Lies, and Videotape. But it doesn't matter as long as you get the performance that both of you are happy with.
Right. It's so interesting that two people can kind of, a brilliant movie comes out of it, and two people kind of have their own ways of finding their way toward this product.
It's more than two. I think the kind of collaborations that happen with the actors are very similar to the collaborations that are happening elsewhere on the production. That one of the real joys of making a movie is that you're juggling all these different collaborations and that you're kind of inviting this really big group of artists in to kind of bring their ideas about a character, a room, a frame, an article of clothing, and then the personality of the movie becomes a function of that work. I think that's my kind of. I'm having such a fun week this week, and one of the things I'm really trying to hold on to and feel proud of is that the movie, whether you like it or hate it, I think it's undeniable that it has a very strong personality, and that personality to me is an expression of a group of people that I really admire and respect and kind of loved working with.
I want to just go back to something you said at the very beginning about how you got the whole cast together and you were kind of like, let them, I think you said let them play or let them kind of do their thing. Was there a sense of that, of like all of the actors, you were kind of figuring out this world and this very strange dynamic, in the moment?
Yeah, eventually it comes with a film set's also this. It's such an intense kind of time. It's a group of people who go very quickly from not knowing anything about one another to having to be very intimate and vulnerable with one another. And so, one of the things, I had never done this before, so the next time what I learned is that like we plan scenes for the first couple days of the shoot that I would never plan again, because they needed a kind of quality that really was much harder than it should have been to get. Because the group hadn't totally acclimated yet. But to more directly answer your question, I think that from the script stage, we were building scenes. We would talk about the crinoline of a dress, the structure underneath a dress. We would talk about this idea of a crinoline, and that what we were after in the script was like basically building the dramatic boundaries of a scene, and that we would write the dialogue on top of it that we imagined in our heads as we imagined what that event would be, a brunch or an engagement party. But we would get really specific about the kind of emotional progression of a given scene, or the emotional context of a given scene, an engagement party of someone who is probably making a mistake that has a kind of inherent tension to it, of like the kind of performance of pretending that it's normal and nice. And so a lot of the script was kind of built around a set of, feelings or kind of, they were built around events that then we would kind of bring the actors in and say, like, here's what's going on, here's what your lines are, feel free to like play around with those. And, often we would do improv takes. The first scene of the movie that's Andie improvising this kind of beautiful, spontaneous, natural kind of idea of what happiness is.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Turned out really good, didn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of was.
Did you know it while you were doing it? Were you like
No.
killing it?
It just when I saw the movie the first time, I was just like, wow, that was magic. That I said that, because it suits the movie just right.
I said that the other day to someone. They like asked me what I thought it meant, and I was like, I don't totally know what it means, but I know it harmonizes with the movie somehow.
Yeah, but it kind of sets everything out too. Yeah. It also helps in my relationship with my son. The fact that I say, but sex is pretty good with your your dad's pretty good in bed.
Right.
Because it's such an inappropriate thing to say.
Yeah,
It's just wrong.
And it's a line that stands out in the moment.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
cut
like a punchline.
It kind of sums up our relationship.
Yeah.
That says it all right there. And also, I think it also sums up the fact that you can't always be happy. It's the truth. Mm-hmm. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another like completely wordless moment or dialogueless moment in the movie where Suzanne goes into that dance party, and it's this feeling of I can't find like my place, but also I like a kind of defiant, I'm not giving up on life thing, which I think is also like a challenging, it's a hard needle to thread to do both of those things of I'm lost and I'm strong.
That scene's always the one that I kind of get choked up for. It's the one that I think still is the most moving to me. This image of her, wandering this kind of adolescent dance. I love that feeling that the association of that kind of, you remember how we talked about that scene? Like I was like, it felt to me like an alien ship that's kind of separated from the mothership, and just kind of wandering space.
And also because she had just had sex too,
Right.
Again,
Right.
So it was like, what does that mean?
Right.
How did that really go?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And the idea
Might have ended up a little bit lonely yet again.
Totally.
I think so.
And that, well, I won't tell that story. I guess I will say that the well, I don't know what to say.
Hello, we're family.
My wonderful mother, who is a costume designer, and she's retired now, but she was a professor at the University of Evansville in Indiana my whole life. Wait, is someone from what? Yes. Wait, are you from Evansville? Huh? Oh wow. Nice to meet you. When she started dating again, it was like kind of around the time that I was kind of learning what movies I wanted to steal from, basically. Like what movies I was just like, oh, I want to live in there or whatever. And so I started, and I had such a kind of enormous reaction to her dating again that I asked her, like, hey, can I interview you? Can we talk about, because she was doing Match.com at the time. And in the Midwest, like dating online in New York is one thing. In the Midwest, it often means that you're kind of traveling to meet people who live, 20 minutes away or 45 minutes away or whatever. And so her stories of dating.
Call it interborough dating.
Right. But in the Midwest, it's like you have to drive through like fucking farmland to like some Motel 8 or whatever. But so, she kind of taught me to be an artist my whole life. She's a genius herself. But she taught my brother and I like how to draw, and she's probably kicking herself now, but she would tell us to draw from life. She would kind of instill this draw from life. She probably regrets that now, but no, she doesn't. She's very proud. But so she said yes to like interviewing her, and she would tell these stories that were just like totally fascinating to me. And one of them was about the first time she had sex, which was in a hotel room, and she couldn't sleep. She took a bath. That didn't work, and so she just started wandering this kind of resort hotel. And it struck me as such a kind of beautifully expressive, vision of what that experience must be like. The kind of that sex generally is such a kind of vibrant, kind of full, delicious experience. But in the context of, the first time after your husband's died, it probably feels like a lot of things. And the kind of, I don't even want to kind of categorize it just as lonely, because I think it's a huge, cascading, kaleidoscopic, starburst of feeling. And something about her wandering this hotel room and ending up in an adolescent dance, to me, was just like totally the heart of the movie.
Well, it's a beautiful movie, and I just want to thank you all for coming, and congratulations to both of you,
Yeah.
Andie and Russell. Thank you so much for joining me.